Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. We got Dave returning to the show for the second time, I believe, and a new face. Andrea Ross is going to be joining us. Very excited. Now, while I'm excited doing my stuff, y'all should be doing your stuff. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff to get your emails in the morning whenever we go live, which is, of course, every day. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, put it up in the comment section. We can engage that directly through the show, but I don't have a winter storm comment yet, so I'm a little bummed I can't show anybody how that works. Anyway, let's get into some intros. Andrea, why don't you give us a quick rundown, 30, 45 seconds, and then Dave, I'm going to hit you again because it's been a little while after. So what do you got, Andrea? Who are you?
All right.
Where do you come from?
Oh my goodness. Hi, I'm Andrea Ross. I was born in London, Ontario, and I'm now living in the beautiful mountains of Squamish, British Columbia, just north of Vancouver, where I live with my husband, my 2-year-old monkey, and 2 dogs. I am a professional stunt woman by day, and when the SAG strikes wrap up, I hope to return to stunt performing. And before that, I was an elite athlete in the sport of wrestling. And I've been an athlete my whole life. I was a gymnast when I was teeny tiny and clumsy. And I'm still clumsy, but now I at least can do backflips. So there was that. And then I got tall for that, went into wrestling, got to represent Canada for a bunch of years, had a blast touring the world and, grappling with people and myself at the same time. And I moved out here to pursue my passion, which was to be a professional athlete on film and television.
Outstanding. Dave, would you like to follow that?
No, not at all. No, not at all. My resume is less impressive than that. That's for sure. Dave Curvin, and I am the other half. I'm not going to say the better half of the Ruck and Rise podcast, because I think we all know Allie's probably the better half on that. So, but yes, co-host of a new podcast that my new wife and myself and I created, the Ruck and Rise podcast. Little background, I'm a reservist with the Hastings and Prince Edward Regiment here in Peterborough, Ontario. I grew up in Northern Ontario, bit of a sports background, nothing elite or representing Canada in any manner, but again, yes, some sports background and just trying to do better each day. That's me.
Love it. Trying to do better every day. That is the key of the show. It says so right here. So, I mean, really, this is the way it is.
Well, for the record, just to correct the record, I think it's fair to say this, that though you may not have represented Canada at some sort of Olympic Games or whatever the case is, Dave, I do look at you as a prototypical or as a good representation of a Canadian. And so, you may not have a medal hanging around your neck, but in my mind, you're a classic case study of what it means to be a good Canadian. So screw you, Dave Curvin.
Okay. All right. I take it back. And you know what? On that note, I did sort of forget my background. I was a massage therapist for 22 years, and I did work at the Canada Games a number of times, and I had worked with our Olympic athletes on the swim side of things, leading into Rio and the 2015 Pan Am Games as well. So maybe there's some representation as far as Canada goes on that end of things. So.
Well, you do wear the maple leaf on your shoulder, so that's representing Canada right there. That is the big key. Now, we are going to be getting into situational awareness today, and I'm very excited to get back into this. We've been talking about it all week, but interestingly enough, we've hit it from different angles every day. So the first day we started talking about intuition, and then the next day we started talking about our biases, and yesterday we started talking about more the leadership level and more, how to develop in a global scenario, which I thought was really fascinating as well. I'm going to give a quick definition, and then I'm going to ask you guys what your thoughts are on situational awareness, and then we'll dive into the conversation. So right off the bat, situational awareness refers to the ability to recognize and understand an environment, its elements, and how it changes with respect to time or other factors. And then it carries on with, it is essential for effective decision-making in many environments. I would say in any environment in my book, but that's what I would say. So let's start with Andrea. What are your initial thoughts on situational awareness?
That everybody needs it, should have it, should build it. Something that you can collect and work on. It's not necessarily something that is innately, gifted to us. But I think the world would be a better place if all of us had a little bit more situational awareness, because it means that we're looking out just a little bit more than we're, looking in. I think that would be my intro to my thoughts.
Roger that. Dave, what about you? What are your first thoughts?
I agree. I think it's a necessity and a skill set that everyone should have. I don't think everyone. I think there's different levels of how people become situationally aware, and I think life experience and maturity has a lot to do with it as well. I think the more life experience you have, the more situational aware you become of your environment, but also how you perceive things yourself as well, how you analyze things. So that's my 2 cents on the initial phase.
Interesting. Shaun, what are you thinking?
I'm torn. I'm not sure which way to take this because they're two very different paths. So maybe we'll hit both of them during the course of this hour. We'll see. I'll see. We'll all see. I think there's two interesting things in this conversation right now, just listening to the guests. The first thing is it was stated that we could all use more situational awareness, or not everyone has enough situational awareness, or there's people out there with not enough situational awareness. So loosely framing that if everyone had more situational awareness, the world would be a better place, and everyone should have it, and the world would be a better place. However, not everyone does, and not everyone has enough. So here we are in this world that exists today with the reality that a lot of people need more, and there are some people who've got none. And so, that's the reality of it. But guess what? It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing if you spin it into a good thing. And by that, I mean, if I've got someone around me who is devoid of situational awareness, do you know what I do? They're now my new lab rat. They're now the person that I'm going to start observing really closely. Not the person who's got half situational awareness or the person who's got 3/4 situational awareness. I'm talking about the person who can't spell it. Because now I'm going to observe them to see how not only I can improve their situational awareness, but to better understand how they got to that point of no situational awareness. I want to learn more about them, as we'll call it the baseline of no situational awareness, so that I can figure out how to, in the future, improve it for not just them, but for others. Because if we all assume that everyone needs more situational awareness, it just falls out of the sky like freaking magic, then how do we get better at improving situational awareness in the world without studying the people who've got none versus studying people who've got it all? I think you've got to come at it from both directions. So for me, and I know it's going to sound weird, but I like it when someone's got zero situational awareness, because now they're my new lab rat that I get to learn more about the world, not only for them, but for everyone around me.
I'm just picturing Shaun looking at somebody in the back of his head. He's just like, excellent.
But I do. I do. Sure. I mean, listen, I straight up do. And it's not like an evil. It's a, oh, good. Because any scientist should be excited about a new phenomenon or any new data set that they haven't played with for a long time. So I've said it before publicly that when I was in Tier 1 during selections, when I was observing selections, critically analyzing people who were coming through the pipeline for Tier 1 selection, that was my favorite spot, man. Because that is the first time in my life where I got to study high-performing human beings like lab rats in a maze. And I mean, literally in a maze, you know, when you're going through the killing room or the CQB, the maze through there, and you're standing on the catwalk watching people move through it. That was the first time I ever thought, oh, I now have a lab in front of me called human performance, and I better start paying attention because this is an opportunity that not too many people get. So from that point forward, that's what I've done is I've studied the rats in the world. Good rats, bad rats, sleepy rats, excited rats, all the rats in the rat maze that we all live in. And I know that sounds weird, but that's how my head works. I love studying people. I love studying high performance. I love studying situational awareness. I love studying anything that helps a human being perform better. And so when I'm surrounded by people who are freaking amazing all the time, it's refreshing to be around someone who knows almost nothing, because now I get to reset the baseline.
Interesting. Dave, any thoughts?
I do, yeah. So again, going back to that, you know, everyone should have situational awareness, and I think the environment really dictates the level of situational awareness as well. I think we're sort of blessed in North America that we live in a relatively, you know, in Canada anyways, we live in a relatively safe sort of environment. We can walk outside our door, you know, we can walk on the sidewalk, and we know, you know, for the most part that everyone is obeying by the law. They're, you know, driving their cars as they should be, you know, on the road and all that sort of thing. Versus, you know, if I lived in the jungle sort of thing, and I had to walk outside of my village, and my situational awareness would have to be on a next level, I would think, as far as what's around me that could harm me. Again, versus, you know, here in my safe community, my safe environment that's close to me, I'd like to think that there's less things that, you know, I need to be aware of, or pick up in my senses, versus, yeah, being in an environment where I have to be extra keen and extra have my senses on high alert. That's, yeah, my thoughts on that is your environment that you're in.
Yeah, it is very interesting to get into the what situational awareness to use in what environment. Absolutely, Andrea, do you got any thoughts on anything?
Yeah, I mean, other than now picturing a whole bunch of like people as rats running around the city as a big science experiment. But the one thing that Shaun had brought up about how seeing the people that don't necessarily have that high level of situational awareness, but actually focusing on the people that don't have any, it had such a powerful matching to like when I coach. And as much as I love coaching athletes that have already the talent, the skills, the strategy, and all that, and I love that, but the gains that you see with them are so small, you know, and gradual at that point, because it's just refinement. But when you take somebody that maybe hasn't been in that sport or that activity before, and they have no tools in their tool belt, or you just don't know actually what tools, and you, through, you know, feedback and exercises and communication and all that, you kind of, one, bring out whatever natural talent that is, but then also I think the potential gains that they have are so extraordinary in a small amount of time. And so I think for, you know, for situational awareness, that I think that crosses over well, where if you find someone with such limited situational awareness, you have a beautiful opportunity to, you know, yourself, like, give them feedback, give them, you know, constructive criticism, guide them in a way that, one, like, keeps you safe, but also like maybe they just don't know what they don't know. And then it kind of empowers them to either take that information, be like, I love that tool, it's going in my tool belt, or being like, I'm not the problem, you are, you know, but, you know, without, it kind of empowers them to grow and grow quickly. And then that just also gives you new information about that person and how they maybe interact in your space and in your world. So I don't know if that resonates, but that's the first things that kind of popped up to my head.
I saw Shaun nodding through that whole thing, so I think at least he I got it. Absolutely. Shaun, what are you thinking? I know you have a little thing in the back of your head. Right now.
I do agree with that, and I'm much the same way. I love working with baseline. I love working with beginners, with noobs, with rookies, with someone who doesn't have a freaking clue. It's fun because it's exciting for them and it's exciting for me as I work with them. And I've said it before, the game that we're playing in life, this game, I like to gamify the game. I need some game in this game. I need to have some fun as a coach. And so if I can find someone who knows the square root of 0, well, yay me and yay them, because they're about to go warp factor 3 in the knowledge game, and I'm going to have fun watching them absorb it. I love creating winners through a teamwork effort. If they're whatever winning means to anyone nowadays, whatever winning means to the person who I'm working with, is almost unimportant as a definition. I just love people with a positive mindset who have a goal that want to execute against it and want to win, whatever winning is. And so I get to be part of that, 1% of it, 2% of it, whatever the case is. I've always said anyone that I work with will own their own success, in the sense of they'll freaking earn it, because I am a taskmaster. But they will earn their own success because they created it, not me. I'm a willing participant on a journey with them where we're holding hands. They're the one who's crushing it. I just get to go along for the ride. But the ride is for me to determine how much fun the ride is going to be for me. So right from the get-go, if I can find a noob who wants to be mega, then yay us, because they're going to become mega and I'm going to have fun helping them move towards that mega. So gamifying the process of the baseline is super important to me. So situational awareness, back to that. Well, if someone doesn't have a lick of situational awareness and they approach me and say, hey, I'd like to learn more about this, yay, it's fun. It's fun to help people understand new things. And so where it is less fun is when someone shows up and they think they know all the things, all the situational awareness. And so to Andrea's point, I love working with noobs, but you have to work with people at the other end of the spectrum who are mega pros who think they know everything. Because you have to understand the extremeness of the bandwidth. In order to do well somewhere in here, you've got to work with this and you've got to work with that to do well in here. So I've got no problems with working with someone who has all the situational awareness in the world, because now I understand my extremes, and not just the external extremes. I understand my internal extremes, because the noob is frustrating at times, and the mega pro who has all the answers is frustrating at times. And so not only do I have to deal with that externally, but I've got to deal with it, more importantly, internally. Figure out my own nonsense so that I have a clear and concise connection with the person that I'm working with or working alongside of. So most of my wins, honestly, at this age, is all of my internal processes that I'm just cleaning up the ragged edges so that I can deliver a better external product.
Interesting. Andrea, I'm going to come back to you. What do you got? I know you got thoughts. What do you got?
No, I think that the balancing of extremes of like collecting the information of data of like the mega like experts and then seeing the noobs and finding that middle balance, just that's I think the sign of any kind of good coach or journey. And it also then when you started talking about like sorting out with your stuff, I was like, I feel like when I was thinking about situational awareness, something that really came up was without self-awareness, situational awareness, I think there's such a disconnect because, we all take in external factors and information in different ways. And it's that self-awareness that I think is like the sorting hat of like, what does this mean? What does this mean for me? What does this mean for them? And so without that self-awareness of like, why am I reacting that way? Or what do I need from this situation? I feel like there's just such a big disconnect. And so I just thought that was so powerful when Shaun, talked about sorting out your internal stuff in order to work with the external stuff.
Absolutely. Dave, what are you thinking? I know you're processing back there.
I am processing a lot. It's great. Yeah, that's self-awareness. I think that's a key statement. Our current company sergeant major, he's a great mentor for myself and a lot of the troops. And he always poses the question. So when we're going through battle procedure, or we're going through orders and things like that, he always poses a question to us. So what? So what does that mean? So what does this information mean? So, and it can have, depending on your role, responsibility, there's different levels to it. But he's trying to engage us and always wants us to be thinking that. So I've taken in this information. So what? So what does that mean? What does that mean for the bigger picture? And so that component of that self-awareness, I think is really key when you want to ask yourself, or where you're trying to ask yourself, so what? So what does this mean? What is this information that I've gathered? What does that mean for the bigger picture, the bigger mission, the end state, whatever is trying to be achieved here? I also wanted to touch on that sort of the balance between um, minimal situational awareness to I'd like to think myself I have reasonable situational awareness. And so Allie, when I first started dating Allie, we would go into a restaurant, and I think she'd be a little confused at why my seating choice was the way that it was. Even walking to the restaurant, side of the sidewalk that I would choose, and where position wise I would choose to be next to her. Um, all that she developed that, or she was sort of studying as well as we dated and got to know, and then she became more apparent to, as I explained, well, I need to sit this table and face this direction for this purpose, and know sort of the surroundings and all that, and then same with on the sidewalk. So um, so her level of situational awareness, I think, has come up just sort of being around myself with a little bit of heightened. So I think it's probably interesting for her to sort of have studied, over the course of 5 years or whatever, um, how it involves our lives together. And I think she's gained a new respect for situational awareness. I'm not saying that she didn't have any before, but it's come up a level, I would say.
Absolutely. It's similar with my wife and I when we first started dating as well. She was always just like, why do you have your back to the wall all the time?
Right.
Yeah, 100%. This actually brings up a really interesting point that I wanted to touch on today was proprioception, understanding where your body is in space. And I think that it is a direct corollary to situational awareness, because in any situation, whether you're, sitting in a restaurant or walking down the street or backflipping off of buildings, you have to know how your body moves in space and how you react to that space and those movements, those changes. And so I think we've kind of touched on the self-awareness portion of it, but I also wanted to touch on the physical capacity of it, like being able to understand where you fit in the scheme of things as they play out. I think is an interesting lane to take this as well. Andrew, what about yourself? When you're jumping off of all of the things or getting launched through space,
Yeah.
how do you maintain situational awareness in those moments?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because I think, in the stunt world, unlike the military world, from what I understand of it, where you have so much training and teaching and a progressive knowledge building, in stunts and film and television, it's not always like that, right? You get put into a film set, and some people will understand that there's something about to explode behind you while there's a car driving really fast, or you're being 5 people are being pulled on wires in random directions at, and so I think the situational awareness is uh it it varies a lot with performers. And so I know, for me, going back to like proprioception, I was a gymnast from the age of 2, and so a very clumsy gymnast, but a gymnast nonetheless. And so we are trained very early on to know where our pinky finger is in space while we're jumping upside down. And so um, I don't take that training for granted, because I think it has helped in the film world of when you go into like flow state, where you turn off the thinking and you just turn on the sensory in order to, get from A to B, get from action to cut. And that I know if I'm actually just feeling at that point, because I've trained and practiced and all of that, I can feel when my body is in the right position. I can feel when I'm about to hit the ground. I can feel, those hairs go up on end where you're like, something isn't right. And I need to react or adapt, or, which in my line of work, which, it's constant, right? Because those factors are changing at a very quick pace. And so really, really being connected with all of that proprioceptive, like where my limbs are, where my head is, where the ground is, where obstacles are moving, where things are hot, where things are cold, where things are wet. Like, your brain is constantly analyzing and assessing that.
Absolutely. Shaun, you were talking about flow state a little while ago. You want to touch on that just quickly?
Yeah, I dig that, Andrea, and that only comes through years and years and years and years of repetition. And the only way to speed that up is by actively or consciously focusing on getting better at it. So just like blinking your eyes, all of us, we eventually got good enough that we don't count them anymore. Our eyes blink all by themselves. That's just called repetition. But I suppose if we were going to speed up the process of offloading the eye blinking routine, then we would practice it when we're a lot younger with some focus and considering what we're trying to achieve in the moment, which is to offload blinking, which is to offload jumping out of a plane, which is to offload jumping off of any sort of gymnastic equipment, which is to offload all of the things that we step by step by step by step build on throughout our lives. If we're actively trying to build off of things step by step by step by step throughout our life. These are things that just don't fall on our heads and give us magic powers. These are things that have to be actively pursued. For Andrea to change direction in midair and point her finger that way, not this way, those are things that take years and years and years of refinement. The proprioception starts with just trying not to trip on your own silly feet until eventually one day you're considering which angle, which digit, which joint points in which direction in order to achieve the aesthetic that you prefer or the functionality that you prefer. So if Andrea is upside down focusing on which way her finger is pointing, Shaun is also upside down diving through a window focusing on which way his finger is oriented, along the weapon or on the trigger. So all of these things that we have to learn, all of these micro movements start from a gross motor skill, get refined down to a beautiful offloaded process that we get to build on. But it doesn't happen by itself. To get good at something, you've got to focus on getting good at something. And I think that the point that I would like to make is at some point, veterans, first responders, law enforcement, the kind of people that we usually talk with over here as guests or kind of tune in, at some point, every soldier was really good at jumping out of the back of something and making sure their finger was oriented in a certain direction and then running 100 meters and doing that thing. But 20 years later, those skills are all gone. They're gone if you're not practicing them. Now it's a mirage in your mind. It's an illusion that you think maybe you can do, but you can't if you haven't done it for 20 years. And you can't if you haven't done it for 10 years. And you can't if you haven't done it for a couple of years. You might think that you can, but you will never know if you can unless you pressure test that. And pressure test it means like today, you get to throw all your gear on, you get to jump out of something, you get to run 100 meters, and you get to see whether your finger's a bit shaky or not, because you're out of breath and you've got an adrenaline dump and you had all those ideas and they're not playing out like you thought they would. And now things are starting to fracture and you feel the tension of the moment. So there is a wild difference between a moment in time where someone was situationally aware and then 20 years later, they think they're situationally aware.
Interesting. Dave, what are you thinking?
I like it. I like it. Yeah, I think our brains, I mean, we're constantly assessing, planning, and acting, and there's a different rate of speed that has to happen at, depending on the environment, depending on the situation that you're in. Um, I give a lot of credit to my parents. So I played hockey as a kid growing up, right up till the end of high school, and the first thing they did was put me in figure skating, and that, and I know now, the reason behind it, but at the time, I'm sure I was kind of like, well, I want to be a hockey player. Like, why am I in figure skating? But it was those fundamentals that take place in figure skating, those small, minute skill sets that you'll learn that enabled me to become a better skater overall, and then led me to become a better hockey player. So, I mean, I give a lot of credit to my parents on that end. And I give kudos to any parent that puts their child or puts their kid into any sport, because I think sports are a key component into developing a lot of that proprioception that can then transfer into many skill sets later in life. You have to, in order to master or perform a sport or any skill, you have to do a step-by-step process, and you have to master very, fine, set of skills. Andrea, I'm sure you've had a lot of, kind of step-by-step small processes that have led you to, where you have to be now in order to, accomplish what you have to accomplish as a stunt person. But again, I think it's a key component with that proprioception is development and the learning of the sport. That's my take on that.
Absolutely. Andrew, you got anything to add at all?
Yeah, I just I followed up with a question. We'll remember the question after. If I don't ask a question, remind me. But no, what I was saying, Dave, I just like kudos to your parents for understanding that physical literacy is much more important than like sport or athletic prowess, because you need that physical literacy, that proprioception base in order to go on and be good and perform at high levels. And I know that, I went the competitive route in gymnastics, and, which I'm thankful for, but gymnastics and, skating and those basic elemental physical literacy activities are just something that I implore any parent to put their kids in. And like my son is in dance class. He's 2, like, he just runs around with a scarf and whatever, but, and he's in gymnastics and he's in swim lessons, and it's not even to be good at it. It's to be exposed to moving your body in space, to finding rhythm and choreography, to, being in water and being comfortable there. And my hope is that, you build out all of those, the strength, the flexibility, the, spatial awareness, that then he can apply to if he wants to be an athlete. Please hope he wants to be an athlete. No pressure. Anyways, but that, he can then go and choose to be a sport, and all of those tools that he has collected just can much faster apply to then any sport. Instead of, I do see a lot of, kids that are like, they're in soccer at the age of 3, and then all they play is soccer, and they play it 5 days a week, or baseball or hockey. And they're really good and exceptional at that sport. But applying it to other things outside of that sport can be really challenging. And then, when that career in that sport is done, what other tools and, skills do you have? And I don't know, maybe I'm tangenting because I'm like a big, like, physical literacy. It just gets me so excited.
All good. But you said you had a question though?
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Okay, tangent back. Here we are. So my question actually is to Shaun, because I love how you talked about that proprioception, and that skill is acquired over time. Like, that, 10,000 hours, that repetition, that starting gross motor, going into, fine motor skills. And that if you don't use it, you essentially lose it. But in your opinion, Shaun, though, is when you reintroduce, put that gear back on and jump, out of the back of a truck and run 100 meters. Do you find though that learning curve, because you've spent all that time 10, 20 years ago, that it comes back faster?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so it is a good question. But I don't have a simple answer, because the answer is based on the individual. And so if that individual was only in the game for a year and then they bounced for 20 years and now they want to get back in the game on day one, it's going to take them a long time to reintroduce how their body moves. But if that person was in the game for 20 years, and by in the game, I mean like large and in charge in the game, and then they bounce and they take a decade or two off, it should take about that long to have some pretty good results almost immediately. And by pretty good results, I'm contextualizing that against the general pop or the population versus contextualizing it against the individual when they were 20 years younger and they were large and in charge. And so I suppose what it all comes down to, and maybe this isn't the answer that you're looking for, is it depends. But more importantly, it's the fallout of that. It depends. So the fallout being that one individual will have a rude awakening as to how easy it is to get back on that bike and ride like they were a kid again, versus the individual who was riding for a long time, and they get the almost satisfaction of connecting the reality that a big body of work, even if you take a bit of time off, is still there inside of you. You've just got to learn how to reconnect to it, but it will expedite versus the person who was only in the game for a year. So those are two wildly different situations. Now I have a question for you.
Okay, but I do love that answer.
Okay, thanks.
I do love that answer, yeah.
Oh, cheers. As Dave and Andrew were talking, I was thinking about, this hockey thing and this figure skating thing. And I was never a hockey player. I skate on my ankles. I came from England at the age of 10 with a soccer ball in my hand. There was no way hockey was ever going to happen. So I think it's awesome that your parents put you into figure skating. And for all of the obvious reasons, but maybe for a reason that you hadn't considered. So I'm going to throw this at you, Dave, first. When you think about figure skating, do you think of the aesthetics of the sport and how that set you up for the rawness of hockey?
Good question. I think having been in it and then having the foundation laid, I don't think I do, to be honest with you. I think, and again, because I was in figure skating and I understand the fundamentals and what was being developed, I think the fine motor skills that I learned through figure skating, I think of more now rather than the aesthetic component to it. Now, if I wasn't, if I didn't become the sort of skilled skater that I did, then maybe my answer would be different and I would sort of think more along the lines of the aesthetic aspect of it. But I tend to think of it as those foot placements and those very, very minute and fine motor skills that were developed. That's sort of what I think of with figure skating. And when I watch it as well, is I'm watching footwork. I'm watching where their bodies are and how they're moving and landing things. And I'm processing it, and I'm thinking about how those skills led me into a better defenseman in hockey, because my crossovers were a little bit better, my movement, my position was a little bit better. So yeah, less aesthetic and more motor skill.
Okay, now this one's for you, Andrea. So I was going to say you had the luxury, but that's such a poor start. You had the contextuality of starting with gymnastics and then moving into wrestling eventually. And so how I simply categorize that is you were taught beauty before you had to go learn rawness. And so if you would have flippity-flopped that program, if you would have started off in wrestling and then gone to gymnastics, as I see it, you would have never learned the beauty before the beast. And so to learn the beast before the beauty, that works as well. I mean, I know lots of people who've done it. I've done it a little bit myself. But I think there's an important lesson somewhere in here. The beauty before the beast, or the beast before the beauty? What do you think, Andrea?
I love how you phrase that, and not actually something that I thought of before you said it. But in my experience as an athlete and as a coach, I think absolutely the beauty before the beast, because at least in my experience of, of having all of the like fine little control aesthetic, knowing where I am, very easy to then just like, unleash the fury later. And I remember when I got too old and tall for gymnastics at the old age of 15, and I had to retire and move on. And I was cheerleading and I ran track. My whole family's kind of athletes. My aunt went to the Olympics for track and field. My uncle played in the CFL. My cousins were marathon runners. So it was, being an athlete wasn't so much like a family choice or calling. It was like part of the package. So anyways, I got done that, and my friends were on the football team, and they were like, wrestling's the hardest sport ever. I'm like, dude, it's so not, like, and I was like, I could do it. And so I showed up at the wrestling tryouts in my cheerleading costume. So you can imagine the looks I got as like the only female at tryouts, and my like, go team. And I instantly loved it. Like, from the second I stepped on the mat, because the whole beginning part is just like physical conditioning. It's like, how physically uncomfortable can we get you? And I'm like, so uncomfortable. Like, I'm here for this ride, like, let's do the laps. Let's like almost vomit. Let's do the burpees and the push-ups. And then getting to like, yeah, just literally use whatever strengths and abilities you have to overpower another human. Like, that was a pretty cool experience. And because that I had all those, that fine-tuned, like flexibility, I knew how to like activate different parts of my body. I knew where I was when someone was trying to like flip me over or, take me down. I was able to experience a lot of success very quickly, because those skills were already built up, where, a lot of the people that were on my team, it was, are you strong? Are you fast? Are you powerful? But that was on a grand scheme of things. And so then they had to kind of turn that gronky power into like those technical movements, which I already like, I could watch and then just emulate. And so, yeah, I think it increased my learning curve quite a bit. Was I a weird looking, tall, gangly wrestler? Absolutely. I did not have the stereotypical body type for it, but I think because of that gymnastics and the aesthetic and the beauty, it helped me go much further in wrestling had I had started wrestling and then tried to learn gymnastics.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting thought pattern, actually. I'm going to tie it back into something that Shaun had said earlier about the maze, watching people in the maze running around the CQB house and so on and so forth. And another day, Shaun, you had mentioned that you weren't like analyzing this when you were running through the CQB. You weren't analyzing the actual room. You were just moving, and when you needed to do something, it happened, and you just moved. And it was more based on feeling, like all the feelings of where you needed to go, and you just would go there. And so I'm going to come back to this in a second. It might take me a second here, but we're talking about rust, and when you haven't done something for a very long time, how that will degrade your understanding of your own abilities. So diving back into those feelings of, if you were to just jump into the kill house today, right, it might take you a half second to get back into that feeling of like, oh, okay, I know how my body moves again. But for someone like me, who's only done it a couple times, I like how you put it. It would take me a while to really find that flow again, to really find that. And I didn't really know it very well to begin with. So I think that is a big part of it. But the question I have for you guys is, watching somebody else manage that maze, do you guys now find that your understanding of the different realms of the maze, for lack of a better term, has increased? So I think of, someone who watches, say, the UFC. They watch a fight they have absolutely no experience in martial arts, and they just watch a fight, and they're looking at the superficial side of it. They're, oh, look at that punch. Oh, look at that kick. Whereas somebody that has all the time in the world under their belt in terms of martial arts, and they can pick out those fine tunes, fine minute movements, like, oh, look how he moved his hip there. Oh, that's going to be a big shot kind of deal. Do you find that you've now been able to change your situational awareness so that you can apply that in multiple realms as well? Does that make sense where I'm coming from on that one, Shaun? I'm going to go to you first.
Well, it makes sense to me. And so I think as you were describing all of that, and then looking at the panel, thinking how best to describe my opinion on this, I'm going to go with the stunt world, and I'm going to go with the military world, and I'm going to go with John Wick. So John Wick, anyone who watches John Wick, they go to, and any of his movies, just grab 5 minutes of any of his movies. And every army guy is going to sit down and think they can do that. Not maybe every guy, maybe 98 guys out of 100 think that they can now be John Wick. By watching it, they can now do it, which is laughable, of course. But this is how things work with some people. A lot of people, nearly all people, is they will get in a game for a little while and then watch the game and think that they can play it. It's kind of like football. If you've played amateur football and then you sit down on the weekend and watch the pro level football game, you're making all the plays in your head. You're wondering why that guy ran the wrong way. How come he isn't running faster? How come he didn't jump higher? I would have jumped higher. I would have caught that ball. That's what humans do sometimes. And so with John Wick as the example, the 5-minute clip that anyone sits down and watches and thinks, well, I would have done that faster. That's probably because you've never done anything really fast. Or maybe you just haven't been around people who do things really fast. How about that? Because there's levels to the game, as Chance was saying. There's levels to the game in the CQB. There's levels to the game on the football field. There's levels to the game in the stunt world. There's levels to the game in all things. And you can't understand the levels if you're at the ground level. What do they call it? Dunning-Kruger effect, I believe. And so, it's just a case of you don't know what you don't know. And most people don't know a lot until they're in the game long enough to realize how little they know. And it's right about that time that you'll start figuring out that you're not John Wick. And once you figure out that you're not John Wick, you get to look into the future and then make the decision, do I want to be? Because I know that's going to take a boatload of years. Or am I going to play my fantasy game and pretend I'm still John Wick? Well, one is a fallacy and one is reality. And you get to decide in that branching moment which life you want to live. And if you want to be John Wick, get to work for a few years and speed up that 5 minutes that you're watching on TV thinking that you can do it. Speed up your motion, speed up your thoughts, speed up your proprioception, speed up your situational awareness of not just what you're trying to accomplish in the physical world, but inside of you. Because chances are that 5 minutes that you're trying to replicate on the couch in your head is about a decade's worth of work in the external world. And I think that comes down to another crunch moment in our conversation. Situational awareness, if you're starting at a baseline, you can make some rapid gains. But if you're at the baseline thinking that you're the master of the universe in situational awareness, holy moly, that's an entirely different conversation. So maybe I'll pass it over to the guests now and see which way this is going to go.
Dave, what do you think?
I wanted to comment. I want to take it back to the sort of watching, the armchair quarterback sort of thing. And it's fitting that, Shaun's on this because Shaun puts up videos on I would guess a daily basis of his rides, right? You've got the GoPro on the chest and you're flying down the mountain. And like, I have a little bit of a mountain bike background. And I say a little bit when I, think about Shaun's background. But I'm watching those videos and I'm going, I can see the line. I can see, where he's moving, where he's going to be headed. And but I do process also the speed at which he's choosing those lines, and he's analyzing and he's assessing and acting and planning, is reacting to, the next corner, and he's preparing for the next line and the next one. And and I'm I'm man enough to kind of go, yeah, I'd be dialing it back a lot more, watching those videos. But I am guilty as well of, kind of watching it going, yeah, I would choose that line. Yeah, I would do that. I would do it that way. I would, do it this way. So, um, anyways, I wanted to throw that out there because I do watch Shaun's mountain bike videos, and then also kind of analyze it as I'm watching them, what I would do. So.
Absolutely. The fun part about watching Sean's videos is sitting there going, "Oh man, I could totally do that," until you realize exactly how fast he's going. You're like,
Yeah,
"Nope, no, thank you."
exactly,
And
exactly.
I put you on, Andrea. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I love that that Shaun touched on John Wick, and I took a course actually with the stunt coordinator for the John Wick series back in LA earlier this year, and it's just so interesting because even like when they're building those fights, they build them for 3 to 6 months before they film them, and I don't have a tactical background. I take the courses to, to hold a gun that like, looks believable. It's not, but I should not be trusted with that. It's, mine is make believe world. And whereas Keanu Reeves, he has the money and the time to go and take, hour after hour of courses of how to properly reload, how to like shoot, how to actually like, if he had to go someplace to actually, do it. And same with his jujitsu, right? Like he spends he's obsessed with jujitsu, which is why one, they let him do so much of it, in the film, but then that's also an actor doing it. And he has probably done it. That's one take of that one, that, less than that 5 minutes, 50 times in one day on camera with, having to be in the exact place where the camera is catching him and taking that one moment, making sure that like the right bad guy is coming at the right time. Like, and I think that, the armchair critics that, watch that movie, like I could do that. I get that a lot where people are like, I could fall down and face plant. I'm like, yes, everyone can do that once, but like, can you do it? Like when I was on, I got to be on The Last of Us. And so I was like, one of the creatures, and I died a lot. Like I died a lot. But one of the takes, and I doubled Nana, the old lady at the beginning. And I have to come crashing out of this house and basically collapse without my hands and fall face first onto a deck and then get back up and like run at Pedro Pascal. And then he kills me. It doesn't work out so well for me. But anyways, you could practice that. Anyone could have done that once. I had to do it 24 times, in the span of a couple hours. And I separated my shoulder on like the 5th take, and I still had to just get back up and keep doing it. And so I think that, yeah, that anyone that hasn't done a stunt versus like a daredevil move before, yeah, they don't. But then as soon as someone has done it once, they have just that next level of awareness of, what goes into it. You're like, oh, like I noticed that they fell a specific way, or oh, they landed on grass, there's probably a mat buried under there. Like you kind of start to be like a little more aware of how far away you are from actually like achieving, that. Like I've been on a mountain bike, and so I'm just like, I've gone down a hill, and that is about that is how far away I am, being like, I do not go fast because it's not an if I fall, it's a when I fall. And you know and so I know my gap between Shaun's ability and mine is great because I have just that little bit of experience. And I think if I like rode my mountain bike a lot in 1 year, I will never be as good as Shaun, but I will probably have more of a respect and an awareness of where that gap is and what actually goes into what we see versus actually what has to be done in order to do the thing that we see.
This is quite interesting because it brings us back to kind of what we started with even before we got into the topic, which was, you're a representative, right? Shaun is a representative of years of mountain biking, of years of training within the Special Forces, years of all of the things that he has put that time into. And those little snippets of the videos of him riding down the mountain, that is a representation of all of that work. But the only people that can, I guess, recognize that are the people that have put in a little bit of work to recognize how much work that goes into it, right? And so I guess my last thought on this last question really is,
Well, hang on a sec.
Oh, you got something?
There is someone else, though. There is someone else. So, as an example, and I don't like focusing on me or the mountain biking stuff. I'd rather talk about the guest, but here we are using mountain biking as the analogy. So, I think there is someone else who can understand what's going on besides the crowd. So you've got people in the crowd who'll understand what it takes to go fast down a mountain. You'll have people in the crowd who don't understand what it takes to go fast down a mountain. The other person in the crowd is me. And so how do I know how fast I'm going down a mountain? Well, it's just like all of us, just like Andrea, just like Dave, just like Chance. Whatever it is that you're into, you get to train on a fairly regular basis to get good at it. That's called me riding my bike most days on my mountain trails that I know very well. I can ride them with my eyes closed. I've ridden them that much. That's me offloading all of my skill sets so that I can flow across the planet without much thought. But about a week and a half ago, we went out to a place called Revelstoke, where I hadn't ridden for about 20 years, out at Mount McPherson, Frisbee Ridge, and then back to Mount McPherson over 3 days of riding, hard, fast, technical riding. And I spared no speed expenses. I got after it. Those were all first-timers. Every single trail that I was on out there was first time. And so I was going warp factor 2.5 into corners that I didn't know what was an inch around the corner. But I've been riding bike a long time, fast, into the unknown. And I can carve into a corner, and it could be the abyss that I'm about to enter into. A gap of 1,000,000 feet long with a 2,000-foot drop. And as I enter that corner, it's a non-factor. I'm just going to lock up my brakes or throw the bike or jump off, grab a tree. It doesn't much matter. In that moment, my mind is processing in the flow state real time versus 20 years ago when it couldn't. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about training where we don't pressure test ourselves nearly enough, and then first timing where it's pressure test, baby, where you get to understand if you are what you think you are. The story that you tell yourself, the lie that maybe you've been hearing a long, long time in your head that hasn't been pressure tested at all. And so we can all sit down and think that we know how to ride a bike. We can get on our bike and ride our same trail for 5 minutes in front of our house 100 times and think, I'm the best bike rider in the world. Well, come and join me in Revelstoke and first time some of those trails. Now we have context. Not only does that person have context, I have context. It's my responsibility. It's all our responsibility in whatever we're engaged in, stunts or hockey or whatever. Whatever it is that we're doing, if we think we're good, the best way to understand how good we are is to go pressure test that good. First time something blind to see if you're all that you can be.
Yeah, 100%. Now we're running short on time. Any thoughts on that at all? Andrea, you look like you got something.
No, I'm just Church of Shaun today. I love that. I'm just going to go and pressure test because I love that. It's one to be a dominant force in the practice range where everything is safe, everything is familiar. I'm not just talking about the sport range, even like, socially and all that. It's so easy for us to do well in the sphere of what we know. But until we actually go out there and put ourselves into an uncomfortable and unknown position, that's when we actually find out what we know and what we don't know. And I just think that more of us need to do that more often. And maybe not to the extreme of like, a 1,000,000-mile gap with a 20,000-foot fall, but like, maybe we'll scale that down for the average bear.
Just a little bit. 999,000 foot jump, right?
Exactly.
Quite a 1,000,000-foot jump. Dave, any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, they both kind of hammered it home. But I completely agree. Get out of your comfort zone. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. You want to better yourself at something, any life skill, anything at life. you have to push past, and you have to get yourself out of your comfort zone, and you have to push into uncomfortable situations if you want to come through them on the other side. So that's all I got.
100%. 100%. Well, we are just about at time here. Satch just joined in right at the end. He said Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours or 10 years, 100%. First off, thank you for a fantastic conversation, Andrea and Dave. Both of you guys, really great convo. Quick little blurb on Dave. Can you give us a little rundown on the Ruck to Remembrance section before we shut her down? And then we'll do some final thoughts, and then we'll carry on from there. So, Dave, what do you got?
Absolutely, yes, and appreciate bringing that to the attention here. So November 4th coming up is our second annual Peterborough Rucksack March for Remembrance. Across the country, it will be, pretty sure it's the 7th annual. Ian Hall is a gentleman in Edmonton who created this event following he reconnected with a military friend of his, and then shortly after they reconnected, unfortunately, he died of suicide. And so Ian took the initiative, knew he had to do something and wanted to do something to get sort of the troops or the guys together to sort of come together and cope with that. And so, they threw the rucksacks on and they went out for a walk in the woods and sort of shared that hardship together, much as they did, years before in the military when they had to go for a ruck march and share those hardships at that same time as well. So that was sort of the beginning, the initial sort of rucksack march for remembrance. That's how it started. And now here we are in 2023, and there's 7 cities involved, 7 communities involved in a virtual rucksack march for remembrance as well. And this is all in support of Wounded Warriors Canada. So again, November 4th, the second annual Peterborough Rucksack March for Remembrance is taking place right here in Peterborough. You can go to www.ptboremember.com and donate, sign up, register if you're in the area. Come on out and join us. Satch is going to be sort of a guest with us for that event, so we're pretty excited to have him on board, and many others. We've got big goals for fundraising, big goals for participants. And again, there's a bigger end state, there's a bigger picture, piece in the picture as far as raising that awareness and the funds for mental health and that suicide prevention component. So
Outstanding. Now, here's the question. Are you and Allie going to be podcasting during the ruck?
That is a great question. New challenge, new rise out of our comfort zones. Maybe we might have to now.
I think you do now, yeah.
I'd just like to add one more thing to what Dave said, and this is just a small piece to increase the awareness. I've said it on my IG account, and Dave and I have kind of been laughing about it, but I've committed to throwing in $5 for every person who donates $80 or more to the initiative. So starting yesterday, someone has already donated in excess of $80. So now I'm $5 in the bank to Dave, along with my own $80 donation. So I'd encourage anyone who wants to, everyone knows how frugal I am. I'm pretty tight. I got some Scottish in me. So if you want to squeeze $5 out of me, make sure that you donate $80 or more. And from this point forward, you'll be able to squeeze it out of me lickety split.
Let's all drain Shaun's bank account. That's a great idea.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that's great. So let's get some final thoughts then on anything we've talked about today, situational awareness, and any of the stuff that we went over. Andrea, I'm gonna hit you first. What do you got?
Situational awareness. Get some. Get some. Find people that have it. Figure out how they got it. Figure out how much you actually have, and bridge that gap. Just do a little better every day.
I like it. Dave, final thoughts?
I like it. Get some. Yeah. The world is, being pulled in a number of different directions, kind of all over the place. So, I think situational awareness is something to be, if you haven't developed it or in the process of developing it, then keep developing, keep bringing it on. Because I don't think there's a greater time for a need of increased situational awareness than there is now.
Yeah, 100%. Shaun, any final thoughts?
Yeah, to build off of what Dave just said, this week has been a wild week, no doubt about it, globally. And so I think the point I would like to leave everyone with is situational awareness is important in this historical moment here for the planet this week. But don't be distracted by focusing your situational awareness so wide or so far away or so beyond your abilities that you're lost in the news cycle of something that you don't understand. Maybe reel it back and start focusing on your situational awareness of just your own little house, your own little neighborhood, how things are at work, how things are with your friends, how things are in your community. Focus on that situational awareness. Get that squared away. Dial into that. Because what's happening halfway around the world is important, but not as important as what's happening in your world right now, right at your feet, right in your own house. Get your situational awareness dialed in your local region. And then you can start expanding your concentric circles as to situational awareness around the globe. It's important to stay in touch with things, but it's more important to get the things squared away at your feet.
Yeah, 100%. You know, the we've been talking about this all week, and it's been really fascinating because my initial engagement, like my initial understanding of what situational awareness was an external thing. And we've spent all week talking about the internal pieces of it and how to look at it differently from the inside rather than looking at the outside. And I think, you know, Shaun, you really nailed it right there, is that we have to really learn what we're capable of. And then we build upon it. Once we do that, we can grow every day, little bit by little bit. And you can do that with us every day here on The Collective. We'll see you all tomorrow. Chimo.
Jimo.